In this video, we're going to create a Spring REST service for students. So we're going to create this new service that's going to return a list of students. So basically, we'll send over a GET request to /API/students, and this is going to return a list of students for us. All right, so let's kind of look at the big picture here. So we'll have our REST client, and then over on the right-hand side, we'll have our REST service. We'll access this request mapping /API/students, making a GET request, and then this will return a list of students as JSON. And then we'll actually write the code for the service, and we'll do this over the next set of videos. And for the client, we can make use of any client in this example, a web browser or a Postman. Alrighty, now let's talk about converting a Java Pojo to JSON, because our REST service is going to return a list of student objects, and we need to convert that list of student objects to JSON. And remember, Jackson can actually help us out with this. So with the Spring and Jackson support, Spring will automatically handle the Jackson integration. Then the JSON data being passed to the REST controller is automatically converted to a Java Pojo. And then if a Java Pojo is being returned from a REST controller, then it's automatically converted to JSON. And this all happens automatically behind the scenes, thanks to Spring and Jackson. Alrighty, so in this example here, we're going to have this Pojo or class called student. We'll have some very basic fields, first name and last name, and the appropriate setters. And we kind of saw this example a little earlier in some of our earlier Jackson data binding examples. Now, also, just remember here that Jackson's going to call the appropriate getter setter methods for the conversion. So here we're starting with some JSON on the left-hand side, and then over on the right-hand side, we have our Java Pojo. To read those in, then we'll actually call the appropriate setter methods on the Pojo. Now, to send it the other way, going from Java Pojo down to JSON, they'll actually call the getter methods. And remember, Jackson's going to do all of this work for us behind the scenes. Now let's talk about our Spring REST service. So we're going to have our REST client, and then we're going to have our REST service, and again, /API/students. So we'll actually write that code. We'll pass back a list of student objects, or POJOs, and then we'll actually have that converted over to JSON. And again, Jackson's going to handle converting that data over to a JSON array. Now you're probably wondering, sounds interesting, but I'd like to see how this works behind the scenes. I mean, what's really happening internally? Okay, so we can dig into it. So here we have our REST client and our REST service. We make a request to /API/students, and then, voila, there's Spring REST. So Spring REST and Jackson's going to work together. So any requests coming in, if there are any JSON data, they'll convert it to POJOs. But in this case, we're just simply going to that endpoint. Well, on our REST service, we'll create a list of objects or a list of students, and we'll return those items. So then Jackson will actually handle converting that list of students to the JSON array. So remember, Jackson can handle the conversions of JSON to POJOs and POJOs to JSON. So they'll call the appropriate methods and so on, and then they'll send back a JSON array based on that data that we pass to it. And that's really how it works behind the scenes. So a lot of good synergy between Spring REST and the Jackson project here. And it also makes your life really easy as a Spring REST developer. So you don't have to worry about any low-level JSON development. All right, so this sounds really cool. I'm getting a bit excited. So let's look at our development process. So basically what we're going to do is create a Java Pojo class for a student, and then we'll also go through and create a Spring REST service using that @REST controller annotation. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at step one. So step one of creating a Java Pojo class for a student, here's the little UML diagram for it, and then here's the Java code. This Java code is very simple, very straightforward. All we do is we define fields, we define constructors, and we define the getters and setters. So very basic example here. You've seen a lot of this coding before. Now, moving ahead here with step two of creating that REST controller. So here's a little diagram up in the top right as far as our REST client, Spring REST, and the REST service. What we'll do is actually define this REST controller using those annotations for REST controller and @request mapping for /API. So that's our basic controller there. Now I'll go through and actually define the endpoint for /students that basically returns a list of students here. Here I'll set up the get mapping for /students, and then I define the method public list student get students. Inside of this method, I'll create a list of students and return it to the calling program. So here I simply just create a new array list. It's empty right now. And then I just go through and add 3 students, Purnima, Mario, and Mary. At this point, I'll just hard code the data for now, but we could always integrate a database later. But right now, let's just kind of keep it simple just so we get something working, and then we can get into all the database stuff later. So then I go through and simply say, return the students. And remember here, Jackson will actually convert that list of students to the JSON array as it goes back to the actual REST client. And again, it all happens in the background. So for our method, for this controller, all we do is we simply define the method, write the code, return our Pojo or our Java object, and then all of the JSON conversions and so forth will happen automatically thanks to Spring REST and Jackson. So it's really, really cool.